Hey folks, and welcome to the 9 p.m. Live. And to the last 9 p.m. Live in this format, at least for a while. Oh, YouTube just kicked in. Hello, YouTube friends. Welcome to the 9 p.m. Live. And as I was just saying on Facebook, it's the last 9 p.m. Live of this format for a while, probably. Maybe forever, because I'm going to follow through on what I said last night and say that next Monday, this live is going to take the form of sort of communal volunteering to win elections for Congress, Senate, and the presidency in the 2020 November elections. So instead of just bantering back and forth, there'll be a lot of sitting around on the phone or writing postcards or things like that. And I hope everybody will join me. And when you do join me, you leave comments in the chat, or more importantly, I hope that you'll join me in actually phone banking or text banking or writing postcards as we do this together. And I'm going to set aside time every day, basically 30 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour, whatever time I would have spent doing this live, to just sort of do that work, because we are now 66 days out from the election. And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get nervous. There is basically a statistical dead heat between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in swing districts. People are talking about like, oh, Biden's ahead by +3 or +4, whatever. That's statistically not that significant. So if we really want to win this, and Trump's folks are out there knocking on doors and Biden's folks are not, Biden has intentionally decided not to do a actual live field operation. If we want to win this, it's going to be done on those digital communications, and we really need to call everybody. So I'd like to take this time then to talk about something I heard last night and tell a story about unintended consequences. Now, you might remember that here in New York State, we have lots of political parties. We have a Democratic Party, a Republican Party, a Conservative Party, a Libertarian Party, a Working Families Party, lots of different parties from folks to choose from. In order to be an established political party, you need to get a certain percentage of the vote in general elections on your party line. Now, we have something in New York called fusion balloting, which allows smaller parties to endorse the same candidates as larger parties. So, for example, the Working Families Party can endorse the same gubernatorial candidate as the Democratic Party and have people vote for that candidate on their party line. So you can vote, for example, for Andrew Cuomo on the Working Families Party line if they endorse him. And that's one way that smaller parties use to get enough votes to remain official political parties. But you might remember that in the last election, WFP actually didn't endorse Andrew Cuomo. They endorsed and ran Cynthia Nixon. Now, as part of Cuomo's retribution against the Working Families Party and smaller parties in general, I suppose, a commission was formed, or I should say a committee. No, a commission was formed to reimagine the rules around ballot access for political parties. One of those changes requires the WFP now, if it wants to maintain its legit party access, its official party allocation, official party, I don't know what the word is. If it wants to maintain its status as an official party, it needs to whip up votes for the presidential candidate in this 2020 election on its party line. Now, just to say for a moment why it's important or valuable to be a political party, if you're a political party, like an official political party under the law, you have lots of advantages, particularly when it comes to fundraising. You can raise and spend a lot more money directly on elections, and you can raise tons and tons of money for what's known as, quote, housekeeping or party operations, which basically means you can hire a bunch of staff. Now, the unintended consequence. Because of this feud between WFP and Andrew Cuomo, and because of the fact that Andrew Cuomo has been coming for the WFP's status as an official registered political party in the state of New York, the WFP is apparently deciding to allocate its resources in the 2020 election to getting thousands and thousands of voters in New York State to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on their party line. They want to make 6 million contacts in New York State and tell people, yes, to vote for Joe Biden, but to do it on the WFP line, but more importantly, to do it in New York and to contact New Yorkers. 6 million contacts could be every single registered voter in one of these swing states. It is a tremendous, tremendous waste of resources. And ultimately, it is this sort of infighting on the left and amongst the Democrats and their allies that makes it so difficult for us to coalesce, combine our forces, and actually win elections. And this is not the year to be messing around. This is not the year to be throwing resources that we can't spare at the preservation or self-preservation for a particular political party here in New York. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We shouldn't be forcing our allies to focus inward right now. We need all of our resources focused on turning out the vote in other states where it matters, because we need a convincing win, both in the popular vote and in the Electoral College, if we want to have a credible argument against Donald Trump when he says that the election was rigged and he's not leaving our office. Which brings me to the last thing I sort of just want to throw out there, which is that I am not the type of person who generally will say the popular vote matters. The Electoral College vote is what decides the presidency, and I am a process person. I know that you can't win without the Electoral College, and so normally I'll say things like, the popular vote doesn't really matter. We need to focus on getting the vote out in these swing states, which is still true. However, for all the folks who are saying, I don't live in a swing state, I live in a blue state, and it doesn't matter whether or not I vote, I want to tell you, for the first time in my life, I honestly believe that the popular vote matters. And the popular vote matters because the legitimacy of this election is going to be in question. And what the majority of Americans want is going to be an important talking point, particularly if it's a much, much larger majority for one side than the other. The questions are, both in the Electoral College and in the popular vote, the worst place we'll be in. If there is a large popular majority against Donald Trump, even if he wins the Electoral College, there will be a political price he has to pay for that. This election will be a referendum on the Trump administration and everything that's going on. And we really need everybody who is against what's happening to step up and make sure that they vote against Donald Trump. Now, it might be true that if you live in New York or a big blue state, you can get away voting third party. It still kind of shows that you're not in it for the Republicans. But it would be ideal, I think, to demonstrate just how many people are ready to pull that lever for the Democratic candidate, even though they know it doesn't matter. To give that talking point to the Democrats when all of this goes south the day after the election. And to be clear, the day after the election, we're still not going to know who won because of the mail-in ballots. But you can know for a fact that the arguments against the legitimacy of the election will start immediately thereafter. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This year, even though the popular vote doesn't determine the distribution of Electoral College votes per se, it really does matter because of the questions around the legitimacy of the outcome, and therefore whether or not we can demonstrate that a majority of Americans, and ideally a large majority of Americans, are in opposition to this administration's policies will make a tremendous difference politically, even if it is argued ultimately that the Electoral College is the decisive element. Michael Kaplan, popular vote also matters because this election has to show in undeniable terms that Trumpian politics is politically unworkable. There needs to be a political deterrence against someone trying this again. I believe that's That's largely what I said. But yes, I would agree with you. I think it's just such an important thing. And so when I see folks saying that they're not going to vote and that it doesn't matter whether they vote because they're in a blue state, I think that's a very dangerous position. Normally, I would kind of be okay with it. I would just be like, that's a dick move. And like, it's our job as voters. It is our responsibility and part of the social contract of self-governance to make a choice. Sitting out is the coward's way out, right? We are in charge of our government. We are therefore required to make a choice. And if you think it's a lesser of two evils choice, that is still, it's still the reality that when you are in charge of something and somebody asks you, what do we do? Abstaining from leading is not an option. And so for each one of us as a voter and therefore a leader in our own country, because of our franchise, I think that it's just not morally correct to not vote. That being said, at this particular point in time, I think it's also dangerous not to vote because we are so reliant on using that popular vote as a tool to demonstrate the actual will of the country, considering the fact that Trump is ruling through minority control population-wise, or so we believe, and showing that the United States is not behind its president, even if he's able to carry these swing states with much smaller populations, is going to be critical. Walter says, every vote counts this time. Or Schwanya? Oh, I wish I were better at this. Sorry if I butchered your name. Every vote counts this time, and every vote really does count. And so those are sort of the two things I wanted to say tonight. One, tell that story of unintended consequences and just give people a little insight as to like how the infighting on the left right here in New York can deeply impact our capacity to organize in an absolutely critical election, right? Distracting what should be Democratic allies from making 6 million potential contacts in swing states to focusing on contacting New Yorkers for their own internal needs and survival. Just what a waste. And all because we can't get along here in New York. And all because politicians are vindictive. And then, of course, every vote counts. Popular vote really matters. Last thing I'll say is just a thing in the news. The top-ranking military intelligence official committed suicide. Yeah, it was not carried on most of the major networks, but it was in The Intercept, and it's true. The top-ranking intelligence official for military affairs who reports to the National Intelligence Council committed suicide, or that's what we're being told. So just tuck that away in the back of your head. It seems, it's entirely possible that knowing so much about the world would depress somebody to the point of suicide. It's also pretty interesting timing for a person with a pretty interesting position, given the very interesting things that are happening in our world and in our foreign relations. Michael Kaplan, power emanates from the people. The political elites failed in their job to provide checks on power, so we need to assert ours. That's true, and we'll see what happens. Although I will also say that political elites failed to deliver for the people over the last decade or so, which is why a large portion of them rebelled against what they viewed as the establishment or the traditional political leadership and put Trump in power in the first place. It is the failure of the elite to be responsive to the voters that oftentimes leads to the deterioration of democracy as people become fed up. So beyond our reasserting our power in this one election, we need two things. One, we need to elect people who are actually responsive to the people, which means thinking about politics a little bit differently. And two, if you want people who are responsive to voters, you need more people voting more often so that we have more accountability, so that what we're doing to Donald Trump happens to every bad politician. And on that positive note, I understand that it's Friday, so people are probably, I don't know if they're out doing their thing, but Fridays are low viewership for the most part because maybe folks are watching movies. I don't know. I don't know what folks do on Friday anymore. I know a lot of people do go out. I live in the hood. The streets are full. They're out to dinner and what have you. But given that, I've covered everything I wanted to cover. I want to thank everybody who did tune in and thank you for your comments. I'm going to go get some food. And on Monday, hopefully I'll see you here for volunteering, and I'll post up information beforehand so we can all make calls or postcard or text bank for probably on Monday, Joe Biden. We'll kick it off with the presidential race, and then we'll probably add some Senate races and congressional races, maybe even some state races, because understand, one, down ballot organizing trickles up to the bigger candidates and to the bigger races, and two, state elections matter a lot because it's a redistricting year, which means that whoever gets elected to state legislature this year is going to have a say in determining who controls our country for the next decade. Michael Kaplan, I have a game 2 of a doubleheader on mute. Yes, you do like baseball a lot. In any event, so with that, I'll see you all on Monday at a time to be announced. Probably not 9 because I might want a phone bank, and you can't call past 9. Although I guess we could call Central Time and West Coast Time. But either way, and Mountain Time. Either way, I'll let you know, and I'll see you all on Monday. Until then.